Hello and welcome to this Box 42 Studios tutorial on how to make custom assets for Total Annihilation. Now, as you can see here in front of me, I currently have Mappy open with the map Riding the Fourth Wave by Meal Solutions. Now, he and myself actually recently hosted a tournament, which is what he made this map for, and for this tournament I made a pair of features, which you can now see here in front of you. He only used this one here though, on this particular map. Now, the process of making a feature is fairly simple. It's a 6-stage process, and it's going to be using entirely free open source software, which I will link in the description where to get. So the first part will be modeling and rendering the feature in Blender, and with this rendered image we'll then open it in GIMP and edit it. And then we will also create some other images in GIMP as well from scratch. And then we'll index these images in IrfanView with the TA palette. Really easy, simple process. And then we'll be compiling a .gaf, which is where we add all these images together. So the reclaim or explosion animations are made in GAF Builder Pro, which is where we compile the .gaf. And then we'll be using VSC, or Visual Studio Code, I believe it is, to create a .tdf file. And this .tdf file is basically what stores all the information on, like, the amount of metal or energy that you can reclaim, or whether it is even a reclaimable feature or burnable feature. And it just links all the various assets together. And then finally, we'll be compiling everything together into either a map pack, not map pack, as part of a map, or as a feature pack. And we'll be using HPI Edit for this. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the first part on Blender. Okay, so as you can see, here we are in Blender. I've got my asset loaded in front of me. I'm not going to give you a very thorough rundown of how to model and texture here, because I think that is a more in-depth tutorial series that probably I'm not going to do, and I think, to be honest, you should probably go find ones that already exist on YouTube. I would recommend finding the Donut tutorial series by Blender Guru. It's really good, goes through the basic principles of Blender, how to model, texture, basic operations. But if you can't be bothered to do that, I will give you a very, very brief run through of how to do some of the basic operations. I'm just going to hide this over here. Okay, so let's do Shift A. I'm going to add in a cylinder. You've got various meshes you can add in. I'm going to scale that up using the S key. If I want to move it, I can use the G key. If I want to rotate it, I can use the R key. If I press R again, I can rotate it freely in any direction. Yeah. So if I go S in this case, and then I do X, I'm scaling it just in the X axis. If I do S, then Y, you can guess it's the Y axis, and then if I press Z, it's just the Z axis. Now, if I wanted to scale it in 2 axes, but not one of them, I could do S, then Shift Z, for example, to make it, in this case, wider. If I wanted to do it in just everything but the X axis, I could do S, then Shift X. And you get the idea. And there's the same principle. You can press G, then X to move it on the X axis, and then G, then Y to move it on the Y axis, or Z on the Z axis. And then again, R, there we go. And then if you want to do again, you can do R, Shift X to rotate it on just anything but the X axis. Okay, you've got a basic principle there of how to import. Actually, one more thing I should do actually. If you have an item, you can press Tab whilst it's selected, and then you can click on. You can do 1 to select vertices. That's these individual things on here. 2 are edges, and then 3 are faces. This is really, really brief. Anyway, so I've got a face selected. I can press X, and I can scale that. There you go. And Control B is also a nice tool. You can bevel with that, and you can scroll to add more bevels here, or less. Anyway, really basics there. You can find a whole host of tutorials online. Now, if you wanted to texture it, you could just go to the shading tab, and you can see I've already got one set up here. I've got a noise texture going into a Voronoi texture with a color ramp and a principled PDF. And if you want to find these, you can just go Shift A and search for them, or Shift A and then go texture. There's Voronoi and noise texture there. Anyway, depending on what version of Blender you're on, this might look different. If you can't find this, you can always just if that's too complicated. From here, you can actually go onto the Material Properties tab over here. You can click New, and then you can click New here, and then you can just edit your own one. And then you'll have to, once you've created it, you'll have to do this. And then I think you have to, whilst with Tab, you have to go Assign, and it'll be on there. Anyway, again, very basic run through. If you have stuff you want to import, by the way, one more thing, File, Import. If you've downloaded something from some online store, FBX here, .mesh, .obj, .stl, those are the common ones. But yeah, okay. So in terms of the actual scene setup, which is what we're basically here for, you're going to want to imagine you've already got your asset made and textured and all that. Shift A, go to Light, go to Sun. I'm going to move it up just for this point of view. Typically when you have an item selected, so if it's an object or sun or camera or whatever, there'll be a green icon over here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to increase the sun brightness to 3 because I tend to find that Blender's brightness is pretty dull for the basic parameter or default setup. Then I'm going to do negative 45 on the y-axis and positive 45 for the z-axis. I'm actually going to delete this sun because I've already got one over here. Anyway, so if I go back to my trophy, you can see, if I go into the render shader, you can see that there is now sun and shadow on it. If I go mesh and add a plane, I want to, because we're going to need to capture the whole shadow, so we're going to render that out in Blender as well. So I'm going to scale it up until we capture everything here. Now, if I click back on the sun, you can actually see, if I increase the brightness, I'll just show that now, there. But the thing I actually wanted to do is if we press R and then I press Z, you can see you can effectively change the angle of it. Now this matters in relation to the camera, which we'll add into the scene in a moment. And then if I press R then Y, then you can kind of change the length, I guess, of the camera. Of the shadow. Speaking of cameras though, I'm just going to actually delete this and then go back to the plane I've already got here, because I already have one. You can see I've already got my camera set up here, but if you won't have them, so I'm going to quickly just do Shift A and I'm going to go camera. And let me just go back off the rendering one to the viewport shading because it's easier to see. I'm going to click on the camera, I'm going to scale it using the S key. I am going to change all these values to 0. You can either individually change them by clicking on them one by one, or you can just click and drag on the top one and type a value. And we're going to want to change the x-axis to 26.565 because that is the angle of the camera that the game uses. And with the camera still selected, we're going to want to change this to, we're going to want to go on the camera here, click the type, change it to orthographic. And if I go, well, you can either right click on the camera and select set as active camera, or you can go view, you can go object, I think, and then it might be set here. But anyway, right click it, set as active camera, and then you should be able to see it. If it doesn't go to it, you can just go view camera and it'll take you to the camera. So if I do that again, view camera, it takes you to the camera. Now I'll bring back in the trophy, and as you can see we're quite zoomed in, so what you're going to do is with the lens underneath here where we had the typographic, just increase the scale basically until you can see it. And we're going to move the camera up. I don't think it should make a difference, but apparently it is. There we go. Yeah. You want to have it at least so you want to have it so the camera is I guess you want to have it so the camera's capturing everything, so that's why I've moved the camera up here. And I don't think there'll be there shouldn't be any difference now as orthographic between these two cameras. Anyway, I'm going to set this as my active camera because this is the one I used to actually render it. So before we do that, one thing I want to do is we want to go to the render tab here. I might as well put it on the viewport shading as well. We want to go and we want to change this to cycles because cycles is just better, to be honest. And if you've got a graphics card, change this to GPU compute. It'll be more efficient. And then you might have the sampling. Now viewport refers to what you see here, so we can ignore that. But underneath here on render, you might want to increase the samples. I've got them as 4096. I can't remember if that's default or not, but you know, basically the more samples, the longer it'll take, but the higher quality the image. And then you've also got the click denoise here, because it's just I think it's just some algorithm or it basically just clears up the image. It's a Blender tool that clears up the image. But one more thing before we get off this as well, by the way, go down to film and click transparent, because we're going to render 2 images here from this. We're going to render what you see here with the so if I go F12 or up here and render image, you can see it's rendering out the shadow included and the actual feature. But we're also going to want just the feature on its own. And if I close it, so you want to go image and save, I should say. But if I go back here and I make the plane invisible to rendering, just to note, clicking the eye makes it invisible in the viewport. That's your live view. Clicking the camera is the render view, the final image output. So you can actually have it visible in the viewport and it won't render as long as you have the camera off, I guess, over here. Anyway, save those 2 images once they've done rendering, and you will have something like, well, in my case, I have this as one of my outputs, and I have this as one of my outputs. Okay, so we're now done with Blender, and I think it's probably a good idea to give you a quick and brief overview of what we're actually expecting to get by the end, so you can understand what we're working towards. So we have here, this is my .gaf I've created for the tournament. I have 2 in here, but I'm just going to focus on the one that I showed you. We have just the asset on its own, which is why we rendered it on its own, and we have just the shadow. I'll go about in a moment on GIMP about how to go about getting that. And we have a scar for if the asset gets destroyed. Maybe your feature doesn't get destroyed. You might not need this. You'll have to work out what items and assets you need to make. And then again, we have an explosion, the death animation, I guess, for the item. And then we have the reclaim animation. Now again, maybe your item doesn't explode, or doesn't have a death, or doesn't have any reclaim. It won't be reclaimable. These are things that we will work out, or you will work out as you go along, and you may or may not need to do them. But let's head over to GIMP, because there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about that relates to Blender and the overall process. So, as you can see here, I'm in GIMP, and I have in the top right corner the palettes open. Now, if I go to Windows and it's not there, you can go to Windows, Dockable Items, and you'll find palettes, and that will appear somewhere. Now, this is the TA palette I've got open. I will put a link into the description of where to get it. I actually think that you can just go, if you have HPI Edit, which we'll be going through in a moment, if you open up HPI Edit and load Total 1, if you go and find that, that'll be in your, either, depending where your install is, your TAF domain, I guess, or maybe you've got it installed under GOG. Basically, just find your install for your Total Annihilation and go find the total1.hpi and open it up with HPI editor. You can find something called palettes, and in here you can export some of the palettes. Now, I can't remember if these are the correct ones. Maybe you'll have to let me know in the description. If they aren't, I actually do have the correct ones here. I believe I use the ta-palette.pal, or maybe it's .ac. I think it's .pal. It could be .act. One of these two, doesn't really matter. I will upload those and put those in the description for you, just in case. It's probably a lot quicker. Maybe they're downloadable on the Discord or something. I'll put like a pin in the video description, or in the comment section rather, with what I did to get this. And you can also find, as I said, all the downloads in the description. Anyway, to my point, TA uses either 8-bit or 16-bit color, I can't remember what it is, and basically these colors here are limiting, or technically this is the color spectrum of TA, so you can only use these colors in TA. Just to note, this one color here, if I double click on the palette with hex code 5454FC, is the invisible transparency color, so you actually can't use that color. That's probably the only color you can't do. But basically, the reason I'm saying this is because when you go to texturing your asset, you may want to try and use these colors here as your base colors, because as you can see, this is what it looks like for me here, but when we go onto the map in game, it is actually grey, and that's because those colors, when we index this image, they don't translate into a TA color, basically, so it goes to the closest one possible. And even though there are light purples here, it thought that actually they were closer to greys than it was purple. Maybe I could have played around with it. I couldn't really be bothered to do that, so I left it as it was, and I was happy with the result. But maybe you'll want to do that. It's just one thing to note. Also, what it looks like in the render here, even if you do end up using colors on the color scheme, the final result might not look or have a color that matches over here. So that's why we index as well. Anyway, that long, boring, tedious bit about palettes out the way, we can now begin with importing our images into Blender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and find my images. I'm going to open up Blender and I'm going to import that in, and I'm just going to scale it down. And it's important to note that the size of the image is 1-to-1 in game, and what I mean by that is every pixel is used. So 1 pixel of the image will be 1 pixel on your screen in game, because that's just how TA is rendered. So I'm going to go and change this to, I think I did it before, about 18%. I'm going to scale that down, and I'm also going to go and I'm going to drag and drop in the other image that I rendered out before. No, I don't want to go to there. I want to go to GIMP, please. Okay, right. One moment. We'll go here. There we go. And I'm just going to scale this down by the same percentage, because obviously you want to keep things consistent. 18% scale. Okay, right. So you can see here we have my image now scaled down. I am just going to quickly move this about. Let me just move this image to... I'm just going to line them up, basically. There we go. I think, yeah, that's aligned now. Okay. I'm just going to make that transparent. And what I'm going to do is I am going to add a new layer. I'm just calling it BG for background. I'm going to put it to the bottom, and I'm going to double click on this here, copy this if you haven't already got it, and just have, basically you're going to want to use this color. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the background to this, because it's going to make it so I can see where things are partially transparent, which we don't want. That happens when you render stuff out. So now with this image selected, I'm just going to copy and paste as many times, and I'm going to unselect it, then reselect it and paste as many times. And now, just to make sure, just deadly sure, or doubly sure, not deadly sure, I'm going to go select my color tool. I'm going to set the threshold to something like 100, alpha, click here, and I'm just going to delete things, and if things are still showing up, I think that's okay. I'll just, we want to get rid of any transparency, basically, so I'm doing that. So I'm just going to copy and paste again, and now it looks like finally everything is fully opaque, and we've just got the color. Anyway, one thing I can do now, I'm just going to make a copy, duplicate, I'm going to merge this down. No, I'm not. I'm going to merge it down onto the background. And if I get rid of that, we've now technically got our first image that will need to be indexed. And I'm just going to go here, copy. I don't know what size is this. It is 73 by 177. And I can see that in the bottom left corner over here, it was saying it. So, in fact, it says it. No, it's not. That's wrong. It's 73 by 132. Set it down here. That was just the coordinate position. I'm I'm going to copy that. So I'm going to open up a new one, 73 by 132 in height, and paste it in here. And what I'm going to do now is export this as a .bmp, and I'm going to just save it as, in this case, I'll save it as tut example statue. There we go. You know, whatever. We can just do it as that. And I'll save that, export, and we can go on to the next part. So one thing that I will just do here, layer, I'll do a new layer. This will be, I'm going to do the scar now first, just because it is fairly easy to do. So if I do the old, I'm just going to do another layer of background, BG, and I'm going to do scar. If I just select the color here, I'm going to do the same again. We'll just do the old, there we go. Okay, right, you'll see why I'm doing that in a moment. I mean, technically I didn't need to do that, but basically I want to go to the, I think I use the pencil tool. And if you go over here, you can go to stencils. And I think I don't know what stencil I use, but you can play around with it. I might have already have stuff loaded up that you don't. And what I want to do is, I believe, what was the size of this? It's 130, 173 it was, not 132. I think I just set this to 73. And I think I just did, I think I did something like that. Was it like that? I don't know. I used one of these stencils. It doesn't really matter for the purpose of this tutorial. I'll just go back to this one and just change it to 73 again. It can be a little bit bigger if you want to. I'm just going to click here. I'm going to change it to black. That's obviously important. And there we go. I mean, this is obviously not what my final scar looked like. Find the stencil you want, and just go ahead and do it. And I'm just going to quickly make that invisible, because what I want to do is I want to go to the ellipse tool. In this case, my item is round, so I'm just gonna try and find a happy place where I think that looks like. I think that's probably about right there. That looks like it. We've got the shape just about. We've got the shape of the base of the thing. And I'm just going to go and I'm just going to press Control I now with the layer of the scar selected and press delete. And there you go. You can see I've now got the scar complete. So I guess just to make sure, I'm going to press Control I again and delete everything there. Actually, to make sure, we'll do the threshold again. I'm going to delete everything like so, and I'll just, there we go, copy and paste everything. I don't know why it's not deleting it. It's because I'm on a pasted layer. There we go. There we go. That should be good enough. There is a bit of blur. There we go. We're finally there. Okay. Job done. We've got it finally done. Now in terms of the shadow, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly duplicate this layer just in case I make an error. I'm going to go to filter. I'm going to probably sharpen it, I guess. Did I do? Yes. That'll do nicely. Alternatively, what you can do is also just go I think it is it color? Contrast. You can do something like that. And contrast is probably a good one to do because it makes a distinctive outline. I'm just gonna I don't want this I want this to be selected by color now, or composite. So I'm going to delete that. You want it by composite, I should say. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring back this item here, and I'm just going to select, and this does also select by alpha. I'm going to do that, press Control I, so in this case I'm selecting just the statue itself, and now selecting back on the other one, I'm going to click delete. Am I doing it right? 1 second, let me see. Yeah, okay, I'm doing it right. I'm going to delete this. Hang on, I need to, because of the size. Okay, so one thing that's happened is because the size of this layer is small, it hasn't been able to select outside of it. So if that happens, just press Control. 1 second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a new layer, just because it's going to make it simpler. Sorry, this is a bit peak having to do that mid thing. I'm going to merge this down onto the layer. So therefore, now the whole layer is in use. Now what I'll do is I'll select that, press Control I, go back to this one here, delete, perfect, there we go, as we wanted, and now we've got our layer as intended. I'm just going to quickly go over, and make sure that all the items are, like you can see there was these odd bits of colour where there's artifacts going on. I'm just going to go over and paint everything black. Okay, so now we have our shadow done, so I'm just going to move that. I'm going to have to add this to a new layer as well. So if I do this here, I'll merge that down, and there we go. We've got our shadow, we've got our scar somewhere, please. We've got our scar. Where is it? Yeah, there we go, beautiful. And we can now use these as our separate components to make images. So again, you would just, in this case, I might just, in this case, literally just merge them all down, so they're all on the same one, just so I can do this. And I'm just going to go here, and I'm just going to make sure. What size is this? This is 124 by 152. So I'll copy that, and it said 124 by 152. Perfect. There we go. I was wrong, or I made an error. Apparently, I missed something out. There we go. Let's do it again. There we go. Perfect. And now I can just do export as, and I'll just do this. I'll just name it like shadow afterwards. Perfect, there we go. Saving it as a .bmp again. And then we have this one over here, which is our scar. So 73 by 57 is what it is. So if I do 73 by 57, go here, copy, paste it in, and there we go. We've got our three basic images. I'm just going to say about a scar. Lovely. So in terms of the feature, you might only need just that and the shadow, but if it's destructible, you'll want at least the scar, and probably you're going to want the destruction. Now I'm not going to go through this bit again because this bit is tedious, but essentially what I did was I imported it and then I cut it up into various pieces and had various bits look as if they're rapidly flying off it, and then I drew bits of damage on. And what I'd recommend is that you do one bit, then move on to the next one. Try and separate things up by layers so you can work on them separately. And you can see I'm carrying over damage. And the way it works for TA in terms of destruction is that things just fizzle out essentially a little bit towards the edge and gradually become more and more fizzled. And what you can do is just use, again, same as earlier on, you might want to use this color. I'll just double click and select that, and you can just use the whichever brush. I wish I could find the exact brush I used. It was in here somewhere. Was it this brush? I can't remember. One of these brushes is particularly good. You'll have to experiment with your own time, and you can just like paint you know, you can add little bits of, I mean, that's obviously a bit extreme in this case, but you can just add little bits of damage. If you just want to paint it, then, or like have cracks coming in, because quite often TA has little cracks, then you can add like little cracks that go through the whole thing and expand. So yeah, and you can see I did the other one there. And basically what you would do is that you would have, I mean, each one of these images is going to be a different size. It seems a bit odd, and you might be wondering how it works. Obviously, how is this one translating? You can see this one's bigger. But you'll have to like encapsulate each image as a whole. Make sure don't keep them the same size. You want to keep it, obviously, everything there. Anyway, so once you've done all that and you've done your you know, the explosion, you'll have something in your files a bit like this. So you can see here we've got, I'll just run through them. We've got, it's going to open up in GIMP again. This is an indexed image, so ignore the colors on that. But you can see I've got the bits chopping up, breaking up, and then you've got another layer. This is just the way it works in here for the explosion. And this, for me, I'd recommend, or I found, and I would recommend, that just find an explosion that fits or is the right size. Unless you want to go out and render your own explosion, you're probably not going to bother doing that. And then the same for the reclaim. I just found a reclaim for an appropriately comparable sized item that already exists in the game, and then used that as well. Now, you don't have to make these, you can just find them yourself and then copy them here, and then I've renamed them just to match the current naming scheme I've got. If you don't know where those are, again, just go to here, they'll be in anims, and I think they'll be in, can't remember it's comboom, but they'll be in one of the GAFs here, and you'll have to extract the .gaf, and then I think there's something called GAFDump. I'll link that in the description as well, and that basically like explodes the GAF into the different components like this. But I'll link that in the description as well. Anyway, so you've got all your components. We're going to need to index them now. So let's go to IrfanView. And as you can see here, I've already got it loaded, but I'll load it again. I'll just go File, Open, and this is actually not where I saved it, but regardless, I will open it here. And what we can do is we can just do something like this. We can go Image, Palette, Import Palette, go to wherever your palette is located. This is TA Palette, and you can see indexes your image. And then you're going to go and need to save it. And if I save it, yes, I want to save it. We'll go to where it is, which is the tutorials folder. You can see it is now changed to the indexed image. And this now means that it will correctly work in-game. If you do not index your images, the TA palette will not be on those images, and the game will be confused and unable to use, oh sorry, the software that we use next will be unable to use them. And without further ado, we should probably head into GAF Builder Pro. Okay, so as you can see, I've got GAF Builder Pro loaded up, and I'm going to load in, actually I'm going to load in the ones I made earlier on, purely because I've already got the whole set complete and I don't want to re-go over the whole process again. So I'm just going to load in the ones that we first did. So it's going to be the shadow, compress the image again, and the scar. And I'm just going to say that if you double click on something and it doesn't want to load in, there's some error. Probably you haven't indexed the image. You probably need to go back and do it. Though to be honest, this software in particular can be pretty finicky. Anyway, these ones are not animated, so double click them. And yeah, as you can see here, this is what the complete file on the left will look like eventually. Now, I'm going to suggest you only stick to these three first of all, so that you can get an understanding of the next bit. Because this bit is going to be complicated, potentially, and you don't want to waste any time on it. So, each image has an X and Y position, and they all relate to each other. Basically, I have had to work out the center point of this feature here. That will require you to take it in game. Obviously each feature's got a footprint. The footprint is obviously how many units wide and deep, X and Y I guess, it is. And that's what units use to navigate around it. The center point described by the X and Y position is also where the reclaim icon will appear. So, speaking of which, you can see this one's currently set to 3666. It's a cylinder, so the 36 I was happy with. I left it, as you can see, as was. And the height, I suppose, of the item is a bit different. If this was a flat plane, just literally a circle, this Y position would likely be correct, but it's not. It's a tall cylinder, it's a 3D object, and so it matters. Basically, you are going to have to work out where it is. And I think, I can't remember if I just eyeballed it to begin with or if I actually did take it in game, but I worked out that 101 was the location that I was happy with. So as you can see here, I've got this red mark here, and you can see on the bottom left corner, 101. Anyway, let's go back to GAF Builder Pro a second. I'm just going to change this to 101. You can go up manually, and you can see basically it's moving the image up. I'll just type it in for hastiness. And that's good, we want that. However, this is currently got a center point of 6276, this shadow does. Now, I'm just going to go back to GIMP a second and go here. So I've already loaded these in. So as you can see here, I've got the shadow loaded. And I believe, what did I say it was? It was 6276. So the center point 00 for each image is always in the top left corner. So look down here, you'll see 6276. It's around here. There we go. That would mean that this, I'm just going to cut and paste this. This would be over here. This center point. In fact, I can put a mark on it here as well. There we go. I'll align them up. The center image, actually let me just make this a bit transparent. The center image is there by this logic, the center point. Now obviously we don't want that. That would be annoying and incorrect. So the correct way to do it is if you've still got your things aligned like this. If you haven't, obviously just put them back in it now. I've got them on separate layers, makes life easier. So from the top left of this image to the top right of that center point, this is 29136. And if for some reason it isn't, I don't know what you've done. There we go. I'll change it there. You can see they've now changed position. That's great news. And by any luck, it should be the same as the other one over here. Sorry, I was wrong. I meant minus 29 because actually, as you can see, that's a good point. It is on the negative. Imagine like if you've ever done those things in mathematics, you've got a graph with plots X and Y, positive one going to the top right, or top and right, and then to the bottom and left you've got negative one. Imagine it like that. It's kind of like a chart to some degree. Okay, so let's go and see if I can correctly guess the center point for the scar here. So I'm going to go top left to top right of it there, and it's 3634. And this time it is positive 36 because it's to the right of the center point, or the top left of the image rather. So 3634. We'll go and type that in here. We'll see if I'm correct. So 36 again, this is the same width as the actual tube itself or cylinder itself. And 34, it's a circle, it's not that far off, so it's absolutely fine. Okay, I'll go over here. Yes, thankfully I'm not wrong. It is indeed 3634. I've not made an error. And now I would suggest at this point you compile this. So we could go File, Save GAF. I've already got one here from a trial like I did on Tutorial Features. I'll save it as. It has not saved, is that? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Let's open it up. Yes, it has. Okay. The software is finicky. Sometimes you have to reopen and load it to see if the changes have been made. And as you can see, all my changes have been made, thankfully. That's good. So at this point, I would suggest pausing and jumping to the next part or the next section of the video where we do the .tdf file. And then even to the final compile before you come back, because you can always redo this bit here in the future. And the reason I say to do that is because what we have to do in the next section here, if I just play this animation, is compile all these points to the center point. So as you can see here, I'm just going to run through it. The subframe, if you ever use GIMP or Photoshop or anything which uses layers, this subframe thing is basically a layer. So what it means is layer 0 or 1 and layer 2, or yeah, we'll call it layer 1 and layer 2, or layer 0 and layer 1, whatever you want to call it. And basically it just runs through the whole image sequence here, and you can see I've got an explosion going off. The reason it transitions into the explosion at this point is because after frame, what was that? Yes, after 6 frames it actually goes to 1 layer, because you can see the actual feature itself is dissipated, so there's no need to have a blank file there. So it's obviously TA on a disk trying to save space. It goes to just 1 layer here. Okay, so in front of me you can see a complete set of images for the explosion. Now, I just highlighted a moment ago that the explosion and reclaim is composed of multiple layers, because you have the feature that's disintegrating, and then you have the explosion that is on top of it, as you can see here. And then obviously the feature disintegrates and goes to nothing, then the explosion takes over and it's 1 layer. Now, before I show you how to import these, what I'm going to do is show you where to get these elements if you don't want to create them yourself. So we have the explosion, as I said. All I've done here, extracted it from the original game, changed the color, and we also have the reclaim here. Again, I have extracted it from the original game. And what you need to do is go to totaler1.hpi and click on anims. Then scroll down to effects and extract it. And then you need to go to where you've extracted it, and you're going to have to use something called GAFDump.exe. I will put that in the description of where to get it or where to download it, or maybe I'll even upload a link. And I'll also provide these instructions on how to use it, because it is a bit confusing, but regardless, I'll show you now how to use it. All you need to do is drag and drop the .gaf over to the .exe, and it will extract everything here. And then from that point forward, we need to go to CMD. You might need to run as administrator, and you're going to have to change the directory to the location of this. So you type in cd space /d space, and then you go the drive, and then the root, I guess, to the to where the executable is for the GAFDump. Click enter, and now you can see it's changed to that. Now there is another bit of code that we need to do, which is gafdump.exe, and this time I use .b, or sorry, -b afterwards. And what this will do is extract all the images into separate files. So here you can see we have the actual explosion that I have been using for the features exploding. And I believe somewhere else, I don't know where it is, I can just quickly check now. I don't know where the reclaim animations were. You might have to find them yourself. I can go on extracted quickly and see if they're here. Oh, that's not the right ones. I can't remember exactly where they are now, but basically this is how you go through the process of extracting the images, and then you can use them as you see fit. So once you've done that and you've got them all and you've labeled them correctly as you need them to be, we can get rid of this, I guess, now. You'll have your set complete, as I said here, and then you'll want to head over to GAF Builder Pro. Okay, so I'm back on GAF Builder Pro, and I'm going to show you how to import the actual sequences now. So we'll go to import sequence. You'll go to where you've got your files located. So I'm in the anims file here. I'm just going to scroll down to the relevant section. So I've got the P&B Trophy Stand 2v2 Tournament 2023, and I've obviously labelled them. And I'm just going to add these to the frame section. Now you can try add the subframes. For me, it will not actually work. But this, as I said, this software is pretty finicky and just inconvenient to use sometimes. So we can just do this. Oh, I made an error. That should be that. Just double check here, I've got it correct. Remove that, and the final subframe there. And as you can see, I've labelled them 0, 0 for the layer 1 and 0, 1 for layer 2, and then they're numbering in order of frames. If I click OK, you can see we've now got it added. And if I just do play animation, you can see it's a bit of wobble. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go through like earlier on, and it's tedious. You're going to have to try and align the X and Y positions for all these things. Now what you can do is, obviously whilst you're making these images, they should be fairly, you should be able to work out where your center point was as you've made them from scratch. But for the explosion one here, what you can do is just go and find, using the .gaf earlier on, you can open that in, so we found the .gaf for the FX, and we extracted the relevant sequence. If I go, let me just go, I'll open up another one here actually so I don't go the wrong place. I think we can just, if I do open, and we can just go and open up the FX .gaf, and if you know, let's just preview this animation. Okay, it's not that one. Is it explode 2? It might be explode 2 is the one we were using. Regardless, what you can do is you can just work your way in frame by frame, and you can see the center points here. And what you can do is you can align that yourself. Anyway, back to this. Now we need to add in the subframes. Now again, this is really, really finicky. Go to subframe and insert, and it might not work because this software is just crap, as I said. So I've gone to P&B statue. Oh no, I don't want statue, I want trophy stand, don't I? And we can go to 001, and I know this is the first one. Again, could this window be any smaller and more convenient? Who knows? And I'm just going to add the first frame. And now you can see I've got the first frame. So you can see it is here. And I'm just going to go onto this one here, just because I know where it's meant to be. So I can see that this frame is actually meant to be 66 and 75. So what you do is you'd go through each of these relevant frames, and you would have that correctly aligned. I also need to change this frame, I believe, possibly, to be in the correct position. Yes, so this one needs to be 101. And now we might begin to see this in the sort of correct position. Let's just have this one open for comparison. There we go. So I have got it somewhat in position. You'll need to go through for each frame and basically align it. But now you know the idea of how to do that, and then you can get to the end result of this here, and it should be fine for you. And the same process goes for the reclaim animation. You can work out how to do that from what I've said here. Also, you might want to rename this, so if you just click on it once, there we go, it's now correctly named as to what I want it to be. You might also pick up that this sometimes just doesn't want to save, and you often want to just regularly saving. You might have to reopen the software over and over again. It's pretty tedious stuff. It doesn't necessarily even update the positions of stuff. So I'm always saving after the frame and double checking. And you might have to do that several times before and reopen the .gaf just to make sure things are saving correctly, because it can be pretty tedious, this process, because the software isn't always actually completing the action. Anyway, now on to the next segment. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio Code with the .tdf open, and you can see I've actually already prefabricated it ready for this tutorial. I'm actually just going to drag it to the side, and I'm going to show you what each thing relates to. So if I open up Mappy a second, this name here refers to what it will be in the in Mappy. The world refers to the world it comes under, so as you can see I've got my own one for the tournaments, and the category refers to the actual subcategory within that. Now, the description is what it is in game when you hover over it, and animating will be whether it's like, you know, gas bags, for example, move around, and that's what this will be. This is different to the animating in GAF Builder Pro. Ignore that. This is a different thing. This is whether the unit, whilst it's alive, has an animation. Okay. The footprint you're going to have to work out by taking it in game. It's trial and error. I'd suggest putting down the feature and changing the sizes until you feel something happy. And height, to be honest, I recommend opening up Total 1 and comparing the existing features. You can just go to the features section of it and opening up some of them and comparing existing heights to something that you think is comparable. Now the file name actually refers to the point. Let me just minimize this one here. That means the GAF, the name of the GAF, the .gaf, which we'll be compiling into our either feature pack or map. And so for all the ones you're making, it is going to be the same. For, you know, maybe it's your, I don't know, it might be custom features pack .gaf. Obviously you don't include the .gaf, but that's what that refers to. Now the sequence name, if I head back to the Pro Builder, or GAF Pro Builder, sequence name refers to the name of the feature itself whilst it's living. Sequence name shadow, or shad, obviously the shadow one. Reclamate, the reclamation animation. Metal and energy, how much reclaim it has, or value it has. Sequence or sec name die. This is just the animation for when it dies, and feature dead is the feature that will spawn in after it dies. I'm obviously following the existing naming conventions by having adding shad, rec, boom, and scar for those respectively. Animation transition and shadow transition. I believe shadow transition 1 just means true. 1 is true, 0 is false. It's binary. I believe this just means it has a shadow. Obviously you want it to have a shadow if you've created a shadow for it. Anim transition, I don't know. I would compare that to existing features. Maybe if we go to the let's go to the, is there acid world here? No, I can't be bothered to find one then. But I guess if you go to acid world, I guess that would be let's go CC data, maybe it's here. I wasn't going to bother, but I guess I am. Acid plants. Let's go here. They still have gas bags, still have anim transition 0. So I don't know. Maybe you can find some which do have that or whatever. Anyway, basically, whether it's fileable or not, whether it's reclaimable or not, again, this is the same. The feature reclamate as the feature dead, because if it dies or if it reclaims, most of the time it's going to transition into the same thing, unless it's like a living plant, for example, like a shrub or an archipelago. I think they do. I think this one's black and this one's slightly grey. Anyway, reproduce, no idea what that means. Reproduce area, again, no idea what it means. I just compared to an existing feature and copied that. Blocking, whether you want it to block units or not, you do for the most part, unless it's maybe a shrub. Hit density, I can't remember what that means. I just copied it again. But damage, obviously, is the amount of health it has, or hit points. And then we come to the second part of this feature, and the final part in this file for this feature, which is the actual scar itself. So again, we have the name here, and we have the world it's in, what will happen if you hover over it with your mouse, the description, the category, it's all this. It's basic. It's mostly the same. We have if it's animating, the footprint size, the height. In this case, it's just a scar on the ground, so 0. The file name and the sequence, and whether it's the feature. I mean, it is the same thing. It's the feature dead. Whether it's got an anim transition, it's true. Maybe this is actually just for all the scarring that has that. This is obviously not flammable, reclaimable, reproducible. And then we have whether or not it's the same error again. And obviously you don't want it to block this time, and it's got no health. And that is basically it for the feature. These ones down here are just for the other feature I made. In fact, actually, I think this statue here refers to this one here, and the trophy stand is the one actually here. So this is the one that I actually had done. But the principles are the same. We can now move on to the final part of this process, which is compiling the whole thing together with your map or as a individual feature pack. Okay, so imagine you have just created your features now. You've compiled the .gaf. What you're going to want to do is open up HPI Edit, and we're going to do, it should be fine, new. And I'm just going to save this as we'll go custom features pack. We'll call it .ufo. You can do .hpr if you want, or ccx, whatever. And as you can see now, it is now saved that. And what you're going to do is do create directory, and we're going to do two. We're going to do anims as one, and we're going to do another one, which is features. And the process here is incredibly simple. What you want to do is go to wherever you saved your features or whatever. In this case, I've got some here, so I would just copy over the features I made, the .gaf this is, and copy it into there. And then in terms of the features one, we're going to copy in the .tdf we made as well. So I'll just drag that in, and then we can just go and we can just save it. So if I go to save, yeah, that should be now fine. Custom features pack, and in there, yes, we have already our things that can be used. So now this means you can now go and make your map with these, as long as you have gone to I think you have to go to, is it preferences? Yeah, you'll have to link to the search paths for Mappy, and now you can use these features in your map once you've linked to them. And then if you really wanted to be wanted people to have them as part of the map, say you're uploading it to TAF, what you can do instead is you could actually just make them part of your map. It's exactly the same process. You could open up your map in the .ufo folder for the map, and then you do the same again, anims, features, and then you just drag in the respective files, so the .tdf into the features one and the .gaf into the anims file. And basically this means instead of people having to download the map pack, I'm sorry, the feature pack for the file separately, it would download alongside the map on TAF. So if you're doing it that way, that would be one way to do it. However, maybe in the long run, if you're going to be releasing a lot of maps with these features, it might be beneficial to just release a feature pack and have people download it separately. So yeah, that is the overall process to making a feature for Total Annihilation. Hopefully you found this tutorial quick and helpful, and hopefully I didn't babble on too long. If you want to have a look at some of the other tutorials I've got a tutorial currently on how to make maps for Total Annihilation. I've also got some tutorials and mod showcases for other games such as Planetary Annihilation, and I plan to have some more tutorials coming out in the next few months, though knowing my time commitments, can't promise too much. Thanks again for watching, and feel free to subscribe and join me on my Patreon. Again, thanks for watching.